What's going on, everybody? My name is Bendy, and today I wanted to start a new series that's geared more towards the newer players to Disney Heroes, or those people that have been playing for a while, enjoy the game, and really just kind of want to step up their game by really learning the ins and outs of the games, the stats, the various words and mumbo jumbo that goes into this game. If you've been playing this game for any amount of time, you know that this game is extremely daunting at first, especially if you're a new player. There's just so many things to learn. There's so many game modes, different strategies for each game mode, and I think this series is going to be geared towards just learning the very basics of the game in order to get better. And I think it'll help you to enjoy your game a little bit more. So in today's video, I've wanted to just start with the very bare bones basics of the game and just kind of go through the stats page and what all these core stats mean. So I want to start by showing you that if you go into any hero and click on their detailed stats here, and then click on this I that's next to their name, it'll pull up a little bit of detail about the things in this game, but it really doesn't explain very well what everything is, and it certainly doesn't give any strategy or anything like that. So this series is going to kind of go through all of that and show you how you can use all of these things in order to improve your game. So let's begin. Oh, and future Bendy here. I just wanted to throw in, I'm going to include timestamps for all of the things in this video if you want to just skip around. I know it's pretty long, so just going to do that to help you guys out. Well, let's just start with the absolute most basic thing, their level. So the level is just what level their hero is. It all depends on whatever the cap is for your server. So I'm in server 1, so my cap is at 220 right now, so I'm at the maximum level that I can be for Mulan. Now, the level matters in any skill that has this is like a description. It'll say things like it has a chance to fail against enemies above so-and-so level. And it's always just whatever level the hero is. So if you have the skill maxed out, or their level maxed out, and their skill maxed out, that skill will never fail against any opponent. Except there are a few exceptions, but you can just say that this skill right here is never going to fail against any enemy or any ally. So that's just level in general. That's kind of the most important thing to consider when you're leveling a hero. What I like to tell people is if you're short on cash and you kind of struggle to keep up with the cap raises and the constant updates with the game, I like to tell people for your top heroes that you're working on and stuff to possibly consider leveling up these kind of skills first. That way you're much better off against other opponents that also have stronger heroes that are above, say, the level that you may be at. Because even if you're not at level 220 like I am, or whatever your max is on your server, if you're at least above whatever your enemies that you're facing are, these skills are never going to fail you, and you'll be at a better advantage against them. Now, not every hero has these kinds of skills. Some have one, some have two. Like, I'll show you Louis really quick. He actually has two of them on his blue and his purple skill. Now, that's not to say not to work on those other skills, but it generally might help you if you can max those two skills out first and then just kind of let those ones lag behind a little bit more, because they're not going to matter quite as much against your enemies that you're facing. Does that make sense? So the next thing is their star level. Stars, as you probably know, are just a general little stat booster. Honestly, they really don't matter as much as a lot of people seem to think they do. Only gives, I think, about like a 2 to 5% boost overall on their power and just how good they are. So the star level isn't really an end-all be-all in this game. So I would definitely worry about the level and leveling up their skills a bit more if you're a newer player and trying to get up to a decent level. The stars will kind of just come eventually. Now their stars are leveled up using their chips over here. And in addition to just giving your heroes the stars, chips are also used for two other things. Firstly, they are used in order to advance mods, which I will get into more detail later. I'll probably gonna make a whole video on mods because it's a whole thing in itself that gets pretty confusing, and I know a lot of people don't really understand mods. So I'm gonna make like a whole video about mods eventually, but just know that your chips are used to advance mods, and then they are also used to advance your red skills when you get to red, which red will come after you hit orange 8. What I would recommend as far as how to use your chips is, I would say, what I recommend using your chips for is, I say, if you're free to play and things like that, and you are able to get a hero to red, I highly recommend at least unlocking their red skill as soon as you can. It gives a huge boost in power, even just having it. Like, I'll show you my honey lemon here. So this is literally just level 1 red skill. And look at, you get 11,000 basic damage, 27,000 skill power, and 25,000 damage just by unlocking the red skill. Not even leveling it up one single time other than unlocking it. So it really gives you a huge boost, and it's only 25 chips in order to unlock. So even if you don't have their stars, I highly recommend at least unlocking the red skill. And then I typically just leave the red skill at level 1 until I max out their stars. If you are free to play or just very behind on your leveling up the stars, you can unlock the mods, but I wouldn't really recommend going too far with advancing mods until you've maxed out your stars on a hero. Only because it gets very expensive on the hero chips as you advance through the mods. And I'll show you a example here really quick. As you can see by my dash here, it costs like 90 hero chips just to make one more advance when I get to this point in the mod. So what I would suggest is just getting the mod to the +1, which only costs, I think, 30 hero chips to do. Yeah, it only costs like 30 hero chips to get to that point. So that's not too bad. And then after you get that, you'll be able to upgrade, which is really what the mods are good for, is those upgrades. But I'll get into all that later in the mod video that I make. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the different kinds of damages in this game. So the first thing to consider when we're talking about damage in this game is there's 3 different kinds of damages. There's basic, there's fantastic, and there's true damage. Every hero, or 99% of heroes, have like just a basic attack or a basic like punch or something that they do to attack with when they're not using their skills. And that's what basic damage affects. Also, basic damage affects any skill that has this little punch symbol right next to it. And also, if you look at the description here, basic damage affects any skill that has the orange numbers next to it. So if you see orange numbers, let me see if I can find it. Here we go. So when Sven attacks with Kristoff, the basic damage number affects how much damage Sven does when he's attacking. So the second kind of damage is fantastic damage. Fantastic damage is kind of just like your typical special or magic damage. So any skill that has the little stars next to them is going to do fantastic damage for you. Now, there isn't really a stat anywhere that actually says fantastic damage in the way that it says basic damage here. So most of your fantastic skills are probably going to be affected by your skill power that your hero is. I'll be getting into skill power in a few minutes in more detail, but just know that fantastic damage is usually affected by your skill power. Now, the third type of damage is called true damage. There really isn't very many heroes that have it, but what it does is it ignores both armor and reality in order to attack. I'll show you that really quick in here. True damage is never reduced by armor or reality. True damage ignores all type immunities. True damage cannot crit. So true damage is probably, like, I guess you could say it's the best, but I guess since it can't crit, then it kind of winds up being the same. But there's really only a few heroes that have it. I know Stitch has it, and it's actually this little symbol right here that looks like a shield. I don't know exactly how many heroes there are, but I think there might only be like 5 or 6 that actually have it. It's a pretty rare, but it is a very strong to have on your team. But like I said, any skill that has the little shield next to it is true damage, and true damage ignores both reality and armor, which I will move on to now. So armor and reality are probably the 2 most important stats you want to consider when you're trying to counter a team, when you're trying to fight against a certain enemy. So armor is going to be your defense against basic damage. Sounds about right, right? Pretty simple. And then reality is going to be your defense against fantastic damage. That's pretty much it. So now continuing down the line from just damage and fantastic damage in general, we have our normal crit and fantastic crit. The way it is numbered is kind of confusing, but the way it works is any point above the level of your opponent gives you a 1% chance of normal critting. For example, my level cap of 220 means that with my nick here, any attack I do that does normal damage, I have a 18% chance to normal crit. Now, the amount of damage that you do with your normal crit is determined by crit damage. Crit damage kind of works the same exact way. So since my level cap is 220, every point of crit damage above 220 that I am gives me 1% more damage done by the crit damage. So the crit damage stat here determines that will do 79% more damage with a crit every time I crit. So now next down the line we have a super crit, and I'm going to go over to my dash for this example. So if we look at the description for a super crit, every point of normal crit above 100 more than the enemy's level equates to a 1% chance to super crit. And I believe a super crit does double the damage of a regular crit. So if we go back to our 220 level cap example, our 290, so that means we have a 70% chance to normal crit, plus the 32, which I believe comes from a mod that I gave him, gives me 322. So that means that I have a 102% chance to crit with any attack. So that means I'm pretty much critting every single time with dash, I think, if I'm thinking of this right. So since I'm above 100 level or 100 points here, more than the level cap, that means that against any opponent who's level 220, I have a 2% chance to do a super crit with any attack that I do with normal damage, which I think is every single attack that Dash does. So I don't even know why he has a fantastic crit stat to begin with. But anyways, so that's all that means. And I think the super crit is determined the same way that crit damage is. So since I'm 270, that means I have a 50% more damage done every time I crit with dash. So I think the super crit would increase that to 100% more damage every time I super crit. So I hope all of that makes sense. I know it's a little bit confusing, but let's kind of move on here. So the next thing is going to be skill power. All skill power really does is any skill that has blue numbers is affected by skill power, which is actually quite a few of them. So most of the skills in this game are going to be affected by skill power. And I mean, that's pretty much all skill power is. It doesn't really affect your basic attack or anything like that. It's just any skill that has blue numbers is affected by skill power. Next, we have HP. It's the same as any other game. It's just how much HP they have. So there's not really much to talk about there. All right, so next we have max energy. Max energy is what is used to use your white skill. I will go into some spars just to show an example of that really quick. So I'm just going to go in with this team because I don't really care that much. So I'm going to turn off auto. So this yellow bar right here that you see on the bottom is your thing. And then if you're not playing on auto, if you just click on them, they will use their white skill. That's all energy is just their white skill. Alright, next. Their damage roll. So every hero has one of 4 roles. Damage, control, tank, and support. All that's going to tell you is what they are. Now, I'll just briefly go into what each one is. It's fairly straightforward. So first is damage. Obviously, you know, by the name, it's just going to be mainly your damage dealers on your team. They often have skills that deal boatloads of damage to your opponents, or have skills that will help to create a lot of damage for your team, such as Nick here, who gives a huge boost in skill power to his teammates, while not really doing a ton of damage himself, as you can see. So that's that. The second one is supports. Supports, as you can guess, support your team in a number of different ways. They're often healing, giving your team a huge boost in reality or armor or basic damage or any other number of things. So control heroes, as you can see by Magicka here, is kind of similar to supports in a way, but they're kind of the opposite. So they help your team by trapping your opponents, reducing their stats, stunning them, things like that. So supports, they help your team by giving them boost. Control heroes help your team by giving your enemies nerfs, basically. That's really the difference. And then last, we have tanks, and as you can probably guess by the name, they are the more defensive heroes to play with. They have very high armor, they have very high HP, they often have skills that give them more of a boost in order to block as much damage as they possibly can from hitting your more fragile teammates. And that's pretty much it. They often have a lot of self-healing abilities themselves. And that's pretty much it for the 4 roles in this game. I can go into more details about each of the roles in other videos, but that's just a quick run through of each of them. So next down the list we have position. Every hero has a position that they stand in the beginning of battle. Sometimes they'll move around a little bit as they fight, but where they start in the fight is either back, mid, or front, as you can see. It can make a difference. There is some skills out there that target the furthest back enemies. There's skills that target the one closest to them. That's kind of the most common. So you want to think about that when you're considering your team building, because say you have, let's look at Rapunzel. She's a support hero. Support heroes generally don't have as much defense as other heroes do, so you kind of don't want to let them be up front if you can avoid it. So it might be a smarter idea to have, say, a front line tank up front. I think he might actually be mid also, but just for the sake of the video. So you might want to consider putting, say, a tank up front that can suck up more of the damage for the team in order to make your other heroes do what they need to do to win. It's fairly important to consider, but it's not like a huge game-breaking thing. So next we will cover team colors. Every team is one of 3 teams: blue, yellow, or red. Doesn't really matter a ton. There is some skills that say, for example, I think Mulan does have one on one of her friend discs. Yeah, so she gives such and such max HP to blue team. So any person that has blue team will get a boost from this friend disc. But for the most part, it doesn't really matter the teams all that much, outside of maybe Evasion and mods and who to equip mods to and things like that. It doesn't really matter all that much, especially if you're new. So HP regen and energy regen are kind of the same thing. So at the end of every wave, if you're, say, doing Coliseum or Campaign or something like that, you'll notice that they gain some HP and energy once you get through the wave and then move on to the next one. That's how much energy and HP they're going to regenerate every wave. Evasion is, I believe, your chance of dodging any attack that your opponent throws at you, which I believe works the exact same way. Yep, so it's the same way as the crits. So any point above the level of the enemies that you're facing gives you a 1% chance to dodge any attack that they throw at you. So again, I'm at 220 with my level cap. So any opponent I face that is level 220 means that I have a 50% chance to dodge any attack that they throw at me. Yeah, I don't think there's really any way to increase it. So it's kind of just whatever your level is, whatever stats you wind up with. So that's really the absolute basics. In the next one, I'm going to get into a little bit more of the detailed weird stats, like what improved healing, what conservation, all that stuff. But that's really the very basic stats of this game. How they're determined, what they do, how they affect your game, and I hope that kind of clears things up a little bit for you guys, and especially you newer players, because I know this game is very daunting. There's a million different stat numbers, there's a million different skills, there's a million different heroes, but that's really, every hero has all of that as their basic groundwork that they're built upon. If you enjoyed this video, if you like what I'm doing here, consider giving me a like, a subscribe. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'm on the Reddit all the time, the Disney Heroes Mobile Reddit, replying to people, answering any questions. Shoot me a PM. I'm always down to just make some friends. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Peace out. Plus 32, which I believe is from a mod that I gave him, gives me 412, I think is what that does. Is that right? Or 22. 422. Yeah, that makes sense. Or 322, sorry. I can't do math.